Former French President Jacques Chirac dies at age 86. He had been in office between 1995 and 2007, having served early as Prime Minister for 2 spells and Mayor of Paris between 1977 and 1995. The US dollar strengthened against his major rivals on Wednesday, following the launch of a formal impeachment inquiry into US President Donald Trump. The first World Athletics Championship of the post-Usain Bolt era get underway here Friday, with the sport desperately seeking a new superstar as it tackles a slew of ongoing doping controversies. That's all for our top stories. Stay tuned in this newscast.
Former French President Jacques Chirac, known for a carefully crafted everyman image but whose later years were dogged by allegations of corruption, has died at age of 86. In recent years, Chirac had suffered from memory loss and was rarely seen in public, but the two-time president will be remembered for his political prowess and his cultivated man-of-the-people style. Chirac was born and educated in Paris, but developed an affinity for his family's native region in rural France and never lost his touch for the country or the common man. As president, he clearly enjoyed mixing in with the crowds, trying a bite of this or a glass of that, and often attended agricultural fairs. Even though he graduated from the best schools, Chirac worked as a sailor at one time and even briefly held a job in the United States. Chirac volunteered for the French army in 1956 during the Algerian War, but he was driven by an interest in politics, and at age 35 he became one of the youngest government ministers in France under President Charles de Gaulle. He held a series of national jobs and then, in 1977, became the first elected mayor of Paris, a post that had been, until then, an appointed position. By 1995, his career was flying high. He ran for president and won, but almost from the beginning of his term, he was faced with labor unrest over his economic austerity plans. By the end of his first year, unions nearly brought the country to its knees with strikes that paralyzed the transport sector. The government had to make an embarrassing about-face. The years that followed were difficult ones, but in 2002, he was elected to a second term. As his second mandate played out, Chirac's popularity went into free fall. Even when he suffered a minor stroke in 2005, there was little sympathy against the president. At the end of his term in 2007, less than 1 person in 5 approved of his presidency, a record low. Still, through all of the ups and downs of his nearly 40-year career in politics, Chirac remained one of the most popular public figures in France. But that popularity, biographers suggest, may be due to the perception of him as an everyman rather than for any particular achievement. The dollar index, which measures the greenback against 6 major peers, was up to 0.70% at 99.0290 in late trading. In late New York trading, the euro was down to 1.0943 US dollars from 1.1017 dollars in the previous session, and the British pound fell to $1.2349 from $1.2495 in the previous session. The Australian dollar fell to $0.6754 from $0.6799. The US dollar brought 107.79 Japanese yen, higher than 107.04 Japanese yen of the previous session. The US dollar was up to 0.9922 Swiss franc from 0.9855 Swiss franc, and it increased to 1.325996 Canadian dollars from 1.3236 Canadian dollars. U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced Tuesday the initiation of a formal impeachment inquiry against President Donald Trump over the latter's controversial phone call with the Ukrainian president. The political uncertainty in Washington, coupled with fears of global economic slowdown, worked in favor of the greenback, as the currency is often viewed as safe haven due to its role as the world's reserve currency, noted experts.
The meeting came against a backdrop of tension in the Middle East over recent attacks on Saudi Arabian oil facilities, which the US blames on Iran, allegations that Tehran denies. Millions of young climate change activists across the world in the same week took the street demanding greater action from those in power. French President Emmanuel Macron said world leaders lacked courage but needed it to build peace and take responsibility. German Chancellor Angela Merkel spoke on the silence of the General Assembly about relationships between the US and Iran, stating that she would welcome talks between the states but didn't think it was realistic that sanctions would be lifted first. Donald Trump declared that the future belonged to patriots, not globalists, as he addressed the United Nations General Assembly. The US president said, "Wise leaders put their own people and their countries first." Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro opened the speeches of the world leaders, calling on other South American nations to help restore democracy to Venezuela, which he criticized for his socialist government. The far-right politician also dismissing reports that the Brazilian Amazon rainforest is being destroyed by fire, as claimed by lying media. He accused foreign nations of being interested in the region's mineral wealth and biodiversity instead of its indigenous people. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan talked about the separation between nuclear powers and non-nuclear states, stating that the inequality was enough to undermine the globe balances. The general debate is taking place from September 24th to September 30th. This year's theme is governing multilateral effort for poverty eradication, quality education, climate action, and inclusion. The Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund on Wednesday approved the nomination of Bulgaria's Kristalina Georgieva, Chief Executive Officer of the World Bank, to be the IMF Managing Director for a 5-year term starting on October 1st. Georgieva, who succeeds Christine Lagarde, is the first person from an emerging market economy to lead the IMF since inception in 1944. The Executive Board said in its statement, "It's a huge responsibility to be at the helm of the IMF at the time when global economic growth continues to disappoint, trade tension persists, and debt is at historically high level," Georgieva said in a statement released Wednesday afternoon, noting that she's deeply honored to have been selected as the head of the global lender. For her, priority is to help countries minimize the risk of crisis and be ready to cope with downturns. Georgieva, selected by the European Union to lead the IMF, has been the only nominee for the position. She served on the European Commission starting in 2010 and has been CEO of the World Bank since January 2017. She was the interim president for the World Bank from February to April this year.
The first World Athletics Championships of the post-Usain Bolt era get underway here Friday, with the sport desperately seeking a new superstar as it tackles a slew of ongoing doping controversies. More than 2,000 athletes from over 200 countries and territories will take part across 10 days of competition at Doha's Khalifa International Stadium, where organizers say a state-of-the-art air conditioning system will shield competitors from ferocious heat and humidity. The championships are seen as a key staging post for Qatar as the Gulf state prepares for the vastly greater challenge of hosting football's World Cup in 2022. For athletics fans, the championships will also provide clues to likely contenders at next year's Tokyo Olympics. As ever, all eyes will be on the sprints, where the retirement of Jamaican superstar Bolt in 2017 has left a gaping chasm where an icon once stood. Noah Lyles, 22, is expected to target 100 meters, 200 meters double in Tokyo next year, but is only entered in the longer event in Doha. That leaves the way clear in the 100 meters for rival Christian Coleman, who is chasing his first major outdoor championship title. In the women's sprint, meanwhile, Jamaica's Shirley Ann Fraser-Price is chasing a record fourth 100 meters gold at the age of 32, 2 years after skipping a season for the birth of her son in 2017. Only this week, the International Athletic Association Federation was confronted with multiple drug-related headlines, with news of Russia potentially facing the threat of new sanctions, while German TV channel ZDF broadcast revelations of doping key Kenyan athletes.
Former French President Jacques Chirac dies at age 86. He had been in office between 1995 and 2007, having served early as Prime Minister for 2 spells and Mayor of Paris between 1977 and 1995. The US dollar strengthened against its major rivals on Wednesday, following the launch of a formal impeachment inquiry into US President Donald Trump. The first World Athletics Championship of the post-Usain Bolt era get underway here Friday, with the sport desperately seeking a new superstar as it tackles a slew of ongoing doping controversies. That's the end of our newscast of the day, but keep watching G24 for more information.